In this tutorial, we're going to be making a lady beetle using very simple Illustrator processes. You'll learn how to build a complex object using mostly just the shape tool, the direct selection tool to manipulate individual anchor points, and the shape builder tool. So we're going to start by going File, New. And it doesn't really matter what size your document is. I'm going to be making an A4 document and making sure it's on portrait orientation, but we can change that later. And then I'm going to paste my ladybug over here so I know what I'm doing. Okay, so to begin, we're going to make the head. This is where learning your keyboard commands is going to come in handy. So I'm going to get the ellipse tool, which is L on your keyboard. You might, if you haven't used the shape tool yet, have the rectangle tool at the front of the stack. If you click and hold down, you'll be able to go and select the ellipse tool, or you can hit L on your keyboard to bring it up. If you hold down the shift key while you're clicking and dragging out a circle, it will be a perfect circle. If I'm not holding shift, it can be an oblong or any other shape I want. So I'm going to hold down the shift key, and then I'm going to hit M on my keyboard, M for rectangle. You can click and hold down the shape tool and select rectangle from there otherwise. And I'm going to drag out a rectangle that sits, because we want it to be this shape roughly. So sitting about halfway between the halfway point and the top of the circle. So roughly there. I'm going to select both the rectangle and my ellipse and go to the shape builder tool, which is here. Shift M will bring up the shape builder tool. Really handy just to remember the keyboard shortcut for that one. And then you click in this area here. I'm going to go back to my selection tool, so hit V on your keyboard. There's your selection tool, and just click to deselect everything so you're not deleting everything off your project. And now we can just delete the things we don't want. So I've got my head. I just want a fill, a black fill, and I'm going to get rid of the stroke outline. So over here, if I click on the stroke and then click on none, it'll make sure I just have the circle with the fill. We are going to now get your rectangle tool. We'll make the eyes. So I'm going to drag out one eye here. I'm going to eyedropper just my canvas. So I hit I on the keyboard and just clicked on the canvas to make it white. Now we're going to go over to your direct selection tool. So this one is what you use when you're manipulating and targeting just the individual anchor points. So I'm going to click and hold shift. So I'm selecting multiple at once when I hold shift. So click on both those bottom anchor points to activate them. Now that they're activated, I'm going to drag this up to make it rounded. And shift that around. So I want it positioned kind of like that. We're going to shape builder the end of it off. Hold down your Alt key and click and drag out a copy. And now to make sure that these are the same distance apart from the edge, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift, select both of them and go Control G to group. Now I'm going to hold shift and select the head. And in the Align panel, I'm just going to click on Horizontal Align Center, and that will make sure that these are sitting in the middle and there's equal distance between the edges. Select everything, get your Shape Builder tool, Shift M, and click in the outside parts. Go back to your Selection tool, V, click to deselect everything. Oh, I might need to ungroup that now. Yes, you're going to have to go Shift, Control G to ungroup. And now I can delete off the excess. So there we go, we've got our eyes. Now let's go and get our ellipse tool again. We'll make the nostrils. And I'm going to go Control ++ to zoom in, and holding down the Alt key, so I drag out the circle from where I've got my cursor, and the Shift key to make sure it's a perfect circle. I'm just going to drag out a tiny nostril and hold down the Alt key and click and drag out a copy. And if you want to make sure they're centered again, group both of those together, and then you can select the rest of the head and the nostrils and horizontal align center. No. No, we want to group these again. There we go. It's just shifted it a little bit. That's just me being pedantic. You can normally use the smart guides to line it up. Okay, we'll make the body now. I'm going to make the body out of a square. So hit M on your keyboard, or go grab your square tool, and then I'm going to hover it in the center of my ladybug. Hold down the Alt key, so I'm dragging out the square from there. And I'm going to make it, we're going to adjust it anyway. So I'll make it roughly that shape. And I better give it a color. So you can double click on the fill and give it a color. And now I'll just make sure that's lined up. Let's group all those head pieces together. So Control G to group. All right, so it's a little bit flatter on this side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my Add Anchor Point tool. So you can hit the plus key on the keyboard to do that, or you can hold down where the pen tool is and go onto the Add Anchor Point tool. I'm going to add an anchor point in the middle of the square. So it will let me know where the middle is because I've got my smart guides on. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I want it to be flat on the sides. Now I've got my direct selection tool here to target these top anchor points. So I've clicked on that to select it. Hold down your Shift key and click to select the other one. Now let's round that one in. And then let's do the same for the bottom anchor points. So click on the bottom to activate. Hold Shift to click the other one, and then let's make that a little bit more rounded. So it's not, those anchor points down the bottom are pretty much joining together. So it's a little bit rounder at the bottom than it is at the top, but we're going to shift that up as well. So we want this one to be sitting underneath the head. So to do that, you can either go Object, Arrange, Center Back. I think it's good to learn the keyboard commands. So you can also go Shift, Control, Left Square Bracket, and that will send it all the way to the back of the stack. And I'm just going to fiddle around with the shape a little bit more until I'm happy. And what you'll want is the edges of the head lining up with the edges of the circle. So I can move it manually, or you can use the arrow keys to shift it up and down as well. And then once you're happy with the shape of your body, our bugs are all going to look a little bit different, and that's fine. Then we're done. Okay, to prepare for the next step, get your rectangle tool and click and drag out a rectangle. Just make it a random color. And I want it sitting underneath the head like that, and then send it to the back of the stack. So Shift Control left square bracket to send it all the way to the back. Then what we're going to do, we're making this little white circle here. So we're going to get the ellipse tool. So L for ellipse, let's hover it in between, in the center. So where your smart guides are indicating it's the center. And then we're going to hold down the Alt key and the Shift key and click and drag out a semicircle. And let's make that white. And then what do I want? Oh, I actually want it a little bit flatter, like that. So not quite a perfect circle. When you are happy with the shape of your ellipse, select the ellipse and hold down your Shift key and select that rectangle at the back. Now let's get Shape Builder, so Shift M for Shape Builder, here it is, and click. So we've separated that circle into two halves. Deselect everything, click on the top half, and then delete it off. We don't need this one anymore, so we can just click and delete that off. Let's add some spots to the ladybug. So we're going to use the ellipse tool again. So L to bring up your ellipse tool. These are perfect circles. Hold down your Shift key and click and drag out a circle. Hit I on your keyboard and eyedropper the black head. And because we want these circles to be all the same size, we're going to hold down the Alt key, click and drag out a copy. Click and drag out a copy. Hold onto your Shift key, select both of those dots. Let's position these ones into the center. Oops. And now we want to add another couple. So let's line up that spot with the edge of this circle here. And I'm holding down my Shift key and it's keeping it in line. So what I'm doing is I'm dragging out a copy, I'm holding down the Alt key and clicking and dragging, but I'm also holding Shift, and that's keeping that shape in line with the other one. And then once it's lined up, can you see there with the smart guides? Then I will release and trying to get it as even as I can. We'll see what that looks like. Okay, let's get Shape Builder again and trim off the excess spots. So Shift M for Shape Builder. Then go back to your selection tool, deselect everything. I'm holding down Shift and selecting all the pieces I want to delete off. Done, they're gone. Now for that stripe down the middle, I'm going to use the pen tool for that. So P for pen tool. You need to make sure your fill and your stroke is swapped around. Hover it right in the center, click once, hold down Shift to make sure it's a straight line, and when you get to the bottom of the body shape, then click again. And depending on how big you've made your beetle, I'm happy with the width of that stroke, but some of you might be working on a smaller or larger scale, so you might want to increase or decrease the stroke. When you're happy with it, go Object, Expand, and click OK to turn the stroke into a shape. All right, let's make the antennae now. So we are going to use, let's use the rectangle. tool for these as well. So I'm going to click, dragged out a rectangle, got my direct selection tool. I'm clicking on these two top side anchor points. So holding down Shift to select both of them at once and clicking and dragging. And then I'll shift these anchor points up. And that'll be fine. And then over here, so that's this side here. So now I'm going to use my pen tool to make the antennae. I'm just looking back to see where I've lined it up with. Okay, grab your pen tool. Again, make sure you've got, with your pen tool, your fill and your stroke swapped around. So you've got your stroke foregrounded. And from the outside of the eye, we're going to click and then join it up to the antennae knob and click again. And you can fiddle around with the size of this now and make sure it's proportional. We're going to go object and expand, and that's going to turn that stroke into a shape. So you can see there's an outline all the way around it. And if you zoom in, you'll be able to then line up the edge so there's no gap. Oh, it's a previewing problem. And drag that over. Select both, and then in the Pathfinder panel, we're going to merge them together. So we're going to click Unite. If you don't have Pathfinder, go to Window and Pathfinder. It's in alphabetical order. And then once you've got the window popped up, click Unite. So that's just going to make that shape easier to work with. Then we're going to go Object, Transform, Reflect, and Copy. And hold down Shift key and drag that over to the edge of the eye so it's in line. Very good. Now we'll make the legs. So we'll use the rectangle tool again. I'm just going to come over here and make the leg next to this leg here. So click and drag out a rectangle. Grab your direct selection tool, hold down the Shift key, click on both of those anchor points to activate them, drag in the little white circles to round it off. Go back to your selection tool, and then I've made this a little bit skinnier. When you're happy with the shape, we're going to start by making the leg segment with the pen tool. So let's deselect, grab our pen tool, and make sure fill and stroke are swapped around again. And we want black. I'm going to click here. We're going to change the angle of that shortly. But first, let's add the triangles to the top. So if you click and hold down your rectangle tool, select polygon from the list, and then just click in the canvas. You'll have this pop-up box here. We want a 3-sided polygon. And it will just automatically give you one like that, unless you specify the dimensions, but that's fine. We're just going to resize it. I'm holding Shift here to make sure it doesn't go all wobbly. I'm constraining the proportions. Okay, so we're going to go Object, Transform, Reflect, Horizontal. Okay. Line that up with our leg and hold down the Alt key and click and drag out a copy. This leg, we want to expand it, so go Object, Expand, okay. And then I'm going to hold Shift, select the two triangles and the leg, and in Pathfinder, merge them all together. Now I'm going to go Object, Transform, Rotate, and I want to rotate it 30 degrees. Click OK. And then let's line that up with the top of the leg. Oh. You know what? I want this rotated even further. So that was at 45. So let's add on an extra Object, Transform, Rotate. Let's rotate that an extra 15 degrees. Again, I'm just being very fussy and making sure things are lined up. Use your eye and whatever looks good for you. Now select both of those shapes. We're going to merge them together in Pathfinder, so click Unite, so it's just easier to work with. Now I'm going to take it over to my other lady beetle and line it up with the side of the head. I'm going to go Object, Transform, Reflect, Vertical, and click Copy. And click and drag the copy over here. I'm going to select both of these and go Object, Transform, Reflect, Horizontal, and click Copy. So that's my legs down the bottom there. Let's line up the first one. So I'm using my arrow keys here. We can zoom right in. And then hold down Shift to make sure that stays in line. If they get out of line, it's no stress. You can click on both of them and do an align using the Align panel. And I'm holding Shift here just to make sure they stay in a straight line as I'm moving them. Okay, so we've got another set of legs to go. I'm going to make a copy of both of these. So select both by holding Shift, hold down the Alt key and click and drag them out. I just need them rotated now. So click on Object, Transform, Rotate. And click on -30 degrees. We'll see what that looks like. That's good. And to make sure this one is perfectly aligned, we're just going to go Object, Transform, Reflect, Vertical, Copy. And hold down Shift and drag it over. Done. Okay. So just to finish it off then, we're going to select everything. So I've got my selection tool. I've just dragged a marquee around the whole thing. Now go Control G or Object Group to make sure all of your components are grouped together. Now I can shift the whole thing around. I'm going to hold down Alt and drag out another copy because we're going to do two different color variations. To select a part of the group, you need your direct selection tool. So grab your direct selection tool, click on the body to activate that. And now let's make that like an orangey color. Orangey or yellowy color, up to you. And those two ladybugs will be used in the next part of our tutorial when we build a vegetable garden for them.